What's up, guys? Jessica Lucero here, and we want to fill you in on everything going down in the Always Live world. So stick around and check it out. No shoe company? No problem. Always Live is the new frontier for grassroots basketball. With no barriers to entry, players aren't controlled by any shoe company affiliations. Always Live will execute top-ranked events around the country, allowing players to participate regionally while being exposed nationally. Select events will feature live-stream broadcasts, statistics, player profiles, media coverage, and player databases available to college recruiters and scouts worldwide. This unique angle to grassroots basketball is already garnering attention from people all over the basketball world, one of which is ESPN's Seth Greenberg, who we have on the line right now. Seth, how you doing?
Jess, any better? I couldn't stand it.
Good, I'm glad to hear it, guys. We have Seth Greenberg with 35 years of coaching, 22 years as a head coach, over 380 wins under his belt, and the list just keeps going. 2 times ACC Head Coach of the Year. Coach, I'm so excited to have you on today to talk about Always Live. Of course, we really gotta give it all we've got. We first need to talk about how Always Live is really changing the landscape of recruiting. First, why does that really need to be changed?
Well, you think about the NCAA, and they've changed the recruiting calendar, and they've really put kind of limitations on when coaches can go see players. But with Always Live, what happens is you're bringing the players to the coaches. And, you know, look, everything is instantaneous in our society today. Everyone wants more information, and they want it quicker. They want it in the moment. And basically what Always Live is going to bring these players in the moment to these coaches. Limited time you can go out and see players. Now you can see them anytime you want. And the great thing about Always Live is that it's crossing borders. And what I mean by that is, you know, you've got Adidas, you've got Nike, you've got Under Armour. In a lot of ways, it has the potential to bring all those 3 groups together to see the best playing against the best, and not the same guys each and every night. So I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think it's going to change the way recruiting is basically how coaches do their recruiting.
Now, as a head coach, a former head coach, what are you really looking for in these athletes? You know, these tournaments are going all the way down to kids that are ages 12, 11, and so on and so forth. What are you looking for in these athletes?
Well, for the younger guys, you just want to get a baseline of where they are in that moment in time. You always want to stay ahead of the curve. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, so you want to track players at a younger age. Now, I'm not a big believer, and I love that they have these phenom camps when kids are 10 and 11. You know, to me, an 11-year-old should never be a phenom. I mean, he's a prospect or a suspect or a work in progress. Phenom's a little much for me. But, you know, when a kid gets into a sophomore year, rising sophomores, you want to get an understanding of who he is, how he wins, what he brings to the table, and get a baseline of where he is at that moment. And then what you're going to be able to do is track that prospect and what part of his games improve. You know, his vision improve, if he's a guard. Can he post up a little bit better? Is he positionless? Because everyone loves positionless players, quote unquote. So you get a chance to track these players at a younger age to get a better understanding of who really fits into your system. Because there are so many mistakes being made. There's going to be 800, 900, 1,000 kids transferring this year. Why? Because it's limited opportunity for people to get a chance to evaluate players. With Always Live, they're going to have more information, and information is power.
Exactly. Now, you yourself, you're a father of 3 daughters, right?
Yes, I am.
Very exciting.
Well. Not bad. I'm thriving.
Yeah, you're thriving. Now, what is a piece of advice that you would give to a parent out there that is trying to help raise their student athlete?
Well, you know, I think the one thing most importantly, you know, put them in a good environment, put them in a program where first and foremost, and this is really important, too many parents hand their child over to these AAU coaches. Yeah. All right. But you know what? Like, you tell your son or daughter when they can go out, who they can go out with, when they have to be back in, right from wrong. You've taught that their whole life. Yet the most important time of their lives, you're then handing them over to someone else. Last time parents have unconditional love. Everyone else, they want a little piece of your son or your daughter. You know, they want to see what they can do for them. So, you know, I'd say most importantly, be a parent first. You know, being a parent first understanding that, when you're watching your son play or your daughter play, you know what? Be a parent. Don't be a coach. Don't be a recruiter. Don't be an evaluator. Be supportive. Don't get yourself involved to the point where you're interfering. Like, I went and watched all my daughters play, but two of my daughters play college volleyball. I would sit up and away. And what I meant by that is I would sit up in the stands and away from any parents. And the reason I would sit up and away is because, unfortunately, parents want to be coaches. Parents want to tell that coach what he's doing wrong. Parents only see what their child is doing. To me, enjoy your kids. If they're good enough, they're going to get evaluated. They're going to play. If they're good enough, that coach is going to play them in the most important times. But put them in environments where they can get exposure. And that's the great thing about Always Live, because no matter what the period, you can put them in an environment where then the professionals can evaluate them and get a better understanding of exactly if that prospect, your son, your daughter, can fit their needs.
We have to ask you one last question, because I've been told that you're a self-proclaimed pizza expert. I'm sure some of these younger guys might disagree. They might say that they're the actual pizza expert. So we've got to know, does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
Yes,
no.
I agree with that 100%.
Doesn't belong on pizza.
It does not belong on pizza.
Pepperoni, pineapple, no. First of all, I mean, you can't do it. I know there's some people that like that. What do you put a big old chunk of pineapple? No, first of all, a good cheese pizza beats anything. If you want to put anything else on it, go for it. But I mean, back thin crusted cheese pizza in New York, go for it.
I couldn't agree with you more. If I didn't agree with you on anything else that we talked about, I agree with you on that much at least. Thank you so much for your time, Coach. It's been great getting to hear from a true professional.
Thanks, Jess. Appreciate it.
The spring season has been going on for a few weeks now. I was actually at the first event, NYBL Session 1. The NYBL is a circuit with qualifying events from all over the country. Advanced Athletics, class of 2024 from Florida, surprised me on and off the court. All right, Mikkel, big name out here tonight. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am. There's a lot of high-level teams out here that we're gonna have to compete. Every game's gonna be a hard game. Every game's gonna be a fought game. It's gonna be up and down. It's gonna be hard. You just gotta come out and play.
Mikkel and his squad now have a record of 6-2 on the NYBL. The class that surprised me the most was the class of 2023, which is the 8th graders. Nike's CP3 and Under Armour's Team Breakdown, each powerhouse programs on their respective circuit, went head-to-head in one of the heaviest hitting 2023 matchups of the year. Team Breakdown's Twin Towers, Matthew and Ryan Bewley, alongside fellow top 50 prospect Marvell Allen, prevailed against a tough CP3 team led by point guard Aiden Holloway.
You want to be able to have our Under Armour stamp on our jerseys, the Nike stamps on the jerseys, and the Adidas stamps on the jerseys, and say, you know what? As an 8th grade team, we're branded by Under Armour, but I think we're the best 8th grade team in the country. And if you got a Nike team or Adidas team, it doesn't matter. We're coming to win. I love that atmosphere, and I think it's great that they're able to put all those brands together like that.
NYBL Session 2 in Indy had its equal share of high-level action with the matchup of the weekend featuring 2023 EAB Tennessee facing New World. New World was led by Franklin Ice Ito and came out on top 59-51. The NYBL hasn't been the only series going on so far this spring. The Legion of Champions Icebreaker Invitational has had 2 stops so far, the first being at the home of the Peach Jam, North Augusta, South Carolina. The Always Live crew was on hand to live stream 16 of the top 16U and 17U games with teams across all circuits. Play-by-play announcer Jimmy Cook was on hand for all of the action, and we have Jimmy joining us now. Jimmy, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jess. How you doing?
Doing great as well, thank you. Now, we have to talk a little bit about some of these events that you've been able to cover. Of course, you have a couple more events that you're going to be coming up, but first you were able to go to Icebreaker in North Carolina, in North Augusta, South Carolina, as well as NYBL 2. What have been some teams that you thought those teams really stood out to you so far?
Well, right off the bat, probably the 2 best games that we saw were games that featured the Georgia Stars in North Augusta. That's going to be a Nike-based team, and then the Alabama Fusion. Both of those teams, in terms of overall depth, in terms of what's coming off the bench and what's going on in their starting lineup, has D1 talent. They actually got to play a game against each other while we were there that we called. And it was just a very fast-paced, smooth game where both teams looked like they were in mid-season form, despite the fact that it was an icebreaker.
Right. Now, to dial it in just a little more closely, what players have been standing out to you so far?
When we were in Augusta, MJ Rice of Team Wall jumped off the page immediately from the jump. He is a kid that already has multiple D1 looks when he was going in North Augusta and has done some work with Team USA 2022 as well. And then when we flip over to the NYBL side of things over at Section 2, Ben McGraw of Cream City Southeast really stood out to me. He had some quality defensive plays in the game against the Factory to close out the session. And then in addition to that, his coach thinks he's a top 20 player. We had a chance to talk to him. He had a game winner in that game. It's really been fun to see not only the older kids, but also younger kids as well, just dominate all facets of these events.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting part, is being able to see these younger guys come out and really surprise us all. Now, you have been able to call some Adidas games in the past. What is really the difference that you would say stands out to you when calling Adidas games compared to these Always Live events?
Well, to me, the answer is pretty simple. It's that it does not matter if you're an Adidas, Nike, Under Armour, or an independent in these events. All that stuff is checked at the door, regardless of what the brand affiliation is for you. You're just on the court out there hooping. You're out there getting your name in front of scouts, in front of the whole world, really, to try to make your base. Whereas when we were doing Adidas events, you were limited in that scope, which in a way wasn't only, a disadvantage to the viewing audience, but also for those kids that are wanting to know they're going up against the best week in and week out.
Yep, that's going to be when it starts to get really exciting. I can't wait for that. Thank you so much for your time, Jimmy.
Absolutely, Jess. Thanks.
With the live recruitment period for college coaches opening up shortly, shoe circuit events begin play this month. But that's not slowing down Always Live. We've got events throughout the live period and beyond to give athletes the maximum chance for exposure. For more on some of these top players, including those that won't be at the shoe circuit events, we're joined by grassroots guru and founder of Hoop Hustlers, Jerome Weaver. Jerome, you're a pretty busy guy, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
You're going from place to place for all of these different tournaments, all these different Always Live events going on. And then, yeah?
No, I say, it takes a lot to be able to cover a lot of kids in the country. So, yeah, I travel a lot.
So at this point, now that you've seen so many of these players, so many of these teams competing against each other, the cool thing about these Always Live events is that we are now able to see these independent teams competing against these shoe circuit teams. So who would you say are some of the top independent teams that you've seen so far and that you're expecting to see compete so far?
Yeah, well, it's a couple. I've seen Carolina Wolves that has Javon Benson, who's a great player. And he played for Carolina Wolves, that independent team. Also, Free Bands Elite has a great 8th grade and 7th grade team. AJ Bouye, always been a good independent program. Team South Carolina, always been a good independent program. Zion Williamson and John Morant, who's be like number 1 and number 2 in the draft, both played for Team South Carolina, who's an independent program. So, yeah, it's a lot of good independent programs that are competing in these tournaments.
Now, going into the class of 2023, this class really surprised me when I was able to go to one of the Always Live events a couple weeks ago. That 8th grade class, they are very competitive. Who would you say is your top 3 there?
Well, it's kind of tricky because 8th grade is that transition year. I seen a player this past week in Indiana. And he has a chance, Darrell Sweeting for Balls for Life. And he has a chance to be a great player. And he's one of my top players as well. Javon Bennett, he's also a great player. This guy came off the bench, and he had 22 back-to-back games. And he came off the bench. And I talked to the coach, said he won't be coming off the bench for much longer. He'll be starting, but he was definitely one of the best players that I've seen, especially with the transition moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And now you have an event coming up very soon, right? The Tip-Off Classic. Can you give us just a little bit more information on that event?
Yeah, the Tip-Off Classic is the #1 non-live event in the country. Just to kind of give you a little background, we have all the shoe company teams. Like this year we have Night Riders, who has Scotty Barnes, top 4, Sharif Cooper, who's top, BJ Boston, each one's T1, all Adidas Gauntlet teams, Under Armour teams. Like, it's just loaded with talent, and the top independents as well. So it's a chance for the independents to be able to play against shoe company teams, which means a lot to the independents.
Right. That's the most exciting part, as we mentioned about these events, is that we're able to see these independent teams going out and competing against these shoe circuit teams as well. So it's very big news, very exciting stuff for these specific players and for these specific teams. Thank you so much for your time, Jerome.
Thank you.
The hype does not stop here. Always Live events continue throughout April and May, with our next big stop in Augusta for NYBL Session 3, April 26th through 28th, and the Southern Exposure Showcase for boys and girls 17U teams. Also that weekend, the Midwest Spring Invitational will be taking place in Indianapolis for ages 8U through 14U. And finally, our last event to look ahead to will be the Legion of Champions Southwest Icebreaker in Dallas, Texas, May 3rd through 5th for 16U and 17U teams. To find out more about Always Live events, be sure to visit always.live. And that's going to do it for us. Make sure to tag us in your photos at AlwaysLive USA on Instagram and Twitter. We'll see you guys next time.